Before we begin, the entire PCOT team wants to congratulate Charlie Kilmer for his 25 years of service to OCPC. I had a chance to look through the minutes and saw that he has that amount of tenure, terribly impressive. So Charlie, on behalf of the Plymouth County OPEB Trust, congratulations for all those years of service to OCPC. I know they've been introduced, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention again, I'm the Plymouth County Treasurer. I have brought along with me my special assistant, Matt Hanley, who is a value-added member of the team. He's here tonight to assist, and if we need any questions answered, he's available. And then Kate Canny comes from PARS, Public Agency Retirement Services, and you'll see that in our presentation a little bit later. So that's the team we have here. Before I begin, and I'm hoping to make this interesting, I'll be able to watch some of your faces and see if you're paying attention. I'll try and see if anybody's nodding off so I can flip quickly and make it interesting. But I want to congratulate OCPC for the funding that you've already done for OPEB, for pre-funding your OPEB obligations. You really deserve a lot of congratulations. I want to say bravo and well done. Your GASB 7475 report that is out as of June 30th, 2020, so you'll have another one done shortly, shows that you have a discount rate of 6.25%. I want to talk about that in a bit. But most notably and most important for your purposes, you have a funded ratio of 59.5%. That's great. That's really one of the best in the Commonwealth. It's probably one of the best in the country. It means that you understand the significance of funding this obligation, and you really have done a great job. So you deserve a lot of credit for that. You have some significant assets under management, over $800,000. You've reduced your liability. Your discount rate is 6.25. That's good. We think it can be a little better. If you raise your discount rate, you lower your liability. And that's really another goal that you guys could focus in on. And we'll talk about that during the presentation. So my goal today is to talk a little bit through a presentation that we have. I'll try and go a little slower than I did last night. I went very quickly through that. I know there's some questions that want to get answered. I'll try and weave those into my narrative and then leave time at the end for questions from anybody from the council, because that's probably where we'll all learn the most. I know there was a question that was typed into the chat room yesterday that I didn't get a chance to answer, largely because I didn't see it. And as you'll see in the presentation, one of the things we're proud of is that we enlisted the services of Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane to do an analysis and to confirm that our trust was compliant with state rules, regulations, and statutes. And so they did that. The question was, is there any conflict because OCPC uses Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lehane? And the answer is absolutely not. There is no conflict whatsoever. They were retained for our purposes for a singular opinion, which they've issued. And so we are all set on that front. And I just wanted to get that out. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to talk a moment about the history of the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. Because back in 2013 and 2014, the other post-employment benefit world was the Wild West. People were trying to figure out what to do. They were trying to figure out how to fund it. I'm really glad that Dan Salvucci is on the call and Christine Joy, because they're also part of the Plymouth County Advisory Board. And this really germinated from their efforts because they tasked the commissioners and me as the treasurer to try and come up with a better mousetrap for funding OPEB obligations. Back in 2013, 2014, you really only had two choices at the time. One, you could join the state system, which had its pluses, but it had its minuses. And you could go with an investment professional, an investment team, a bank, or an investment company, which had its pluses and its minuses. But they wanted me to increase the number of pluses and reduce the minuses. And some of the minuses were with the state at the time, you had to sign a contract for 3 years. You had to commit to a significant level of funding. The fees were fairly high. The performance was great, but there were those minuses. And with an investment professional, sometimes the performance wasn't as great and they didn't provide any administrative support. So I did some research. I spent a lot of time, about a year, determining if we could create something that might be a little bit better, offer more pluses and fewer minuses. And what I came up with was a multi-employer trust, a governmental multi-employer trust. Now, while we're one of the first on the East Coast, we're not one of the first in the country. They started out west. They actually started in the private sector and filtered over into the public sector. And I found out that the best administrator of multi-employer trust was a company called PARS, Public Agency Retirement Services. And we reached out to them and said, listen, can we do this here in Massachusetts? Can we be a bit ahead of the curve? Can we come up with this better mousetrap? And they said, absolutely. It's a great idea. We've been doing it for a while. We've done it in California. We've done it out west. Let's do it. Let's do this for governmental entities in Plymouth County and set this up. So I brought the concept. Oh, the other point to make is PARS had a relationship with a little company called US Bank. US Bank is the 5th largest bank in the country. We like to say it's the largest bank you've never heard of. They don't have brick and mortar stores. They really do investments, and they're the largest manager of OPEB investments in the country. So we had access to a great administrative team and a great bank team. I think Kate would admit that I was a bit of a tough negotiator, because I said, listen, I think we want to do business with you, but I want the lowest fees that we could possibly have. And we negotiated those. So I brought the packet to the Plymouth County Commissioners on January 15, 2015, to create the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. As I was doing that, other treasurers in other counties heard about it. They thought it was a great idea and asked if we could include governmental entities in Barnstable, Bristol, and Norfolk County. So when the Plymouth County Commissioners created the trust, they included governmental entities that existed in those 4 counties as well, as a courtesy. We expected that this would be a good project and meet with some success. I will tell you, and as you'll see through the narrative, it has been more successful than we expected, wildly so, both in terms of participation, assets under management, and financial success as well. So let's talk about the program that was created only 6 years ago, and what we're doing and why we think we have a little bit of a better mousetrap. So we're going to go through the slide presentation now. This is the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. There are, next slide, you had it, Mary. There are the 4 components, which you talked about. Plymouth County as the sponsor. The investment oversight, and this is important, is done by an investment committee. So unlike if you were to participate with the state, you don't have any say through an investment committee. You just get the returns that the state provides. They're often very good, but you don't have a say in the investment portfolio. And that wasn't satisfactory to our group. That was one of the minuses we had to fix. So we have an investment committee. That committee is made up of our members in the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. So they actually have a voice in the investment decisions of the trust. We think that's unique. We think it's a great model. It keeps us in contact with our member units. We have a treasurer from a member unit. We have an elected official from each member unit. We have an administrator, and we have an employee from a member unit as well. So we really are looking at it from all angles. And then, of course, I've touched briefly on PARS, just a huge value add to the program. And that's really what's missing out of most of the other OPEB opportunities that are out there in the world, is the services that PARS provides. And then, of course, US Bank, well, all OPEB investment portfolios have an investment team. I happen to think, I'm a little biased, but I happen to think US Bank is one of the best. I actually mentioned last night that I'm the treasurer and chairman of the Plymouth County Retirement Association. We manage $1.23 billion. And I will tell you, in my now more than 14 years doing this job, US Bank is by far in the top 1% of investment professionals that I've dealt with. Next slide. So I talked about PARS and what they can do. You can read the slide. I like the fact that it highlights they were a pioneer of Section 115 OPEB trust and combo trust programs. That's the multi-employer trust component I was talking about earlier. What I really like too is that other point on there about how they monitor state and federal compliance. You can join any other program, But what we bring to the table is a group that monitors what's happening at the federal, state, and local level. They send people to federal meetings. They involve themselves in the comments. So I'm actually learning through PARS what's happening at GASB before other people. They do a great job. And then, of course, U.S. Bank, I mentioned, fifth largest commercial bank in the country, and one of the largest holders of Section 115 trust funds in the country. They are fantastic. You can see they've been around since 1863, so not a fly-by-night organization by any stretch of the imagination. Next slide. So again, I talked about this being designed for governmental entities in Bristol, Barnstable, Norfolk, and Plymouth counties. PARS is the administrator. And here's the point I made yesterday that had the question. We made sure we were legally compliant by utilizing Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, and Complement and Page, and that we are compliant at the federal level. So there's no risk here in making sure that we meet all compliance standards and guidelines. Next slide. This slide is really something that I'd love for you guys to focus in on because we truly are comprehensive. Again, you've got a lot of options, and most people will provide consulting, and most people will provide certainly the financial component of a trust, the fiduciary investment management. But I don't know of others that do the federal and state compliance monitoring, as well as the compliant trust documents and the administrative services that we provide. And that's what I think really sets us apart. So we've got stakeholder involvement through the investment committee, and we have administrative support, which is particularly helpful to some of our smaller clients who need that as part of their support team. So it's very important that you have that support. We provide that through PARS. Next slide. So you guys already know this because you're doing it, right? Why pre-fund OPEB obligations? And I can't commend OCPC enough. I mentioned it at the start. You guys are doing this. You're already 59.5% funded, which is great. And you know that you need to do this to address your liability issue, address GASB 75, plan for long term. I'd like to focus in on potential for greater return because these are long-term assets. And I would say that one mistake I see from governmental entities is they tend to be too conservative. And what do I mean by that? Well, you know, one of the challenges we have is we're stewards of public money. So that obviously makes us very responsible and very conscientious and very attuned with our needs. And we're familiar with stabilization funds, and we are in a position where losing principal is anathema, is something it's against our instincts. And so we don't like risk as government officials. The downside, though, and this is going to be an interesting thought, with long-term investments, there's more risk in not being aggressive enough because over a long period of time, if you don't have the right amount of risk, you're not attaining the asset level you need to meet your obligations. And so when you're looking at a long time horizon, whether it's for pension obligations or OPEB obligations, you really do need a certain level of risk to meet a rate of return appropriate. And that is where you get your fiduciary responsibility. As an example, most retirement systems have a projection of between 6 and 8%. And in order to attain that rate of return on an annualized basis over the 20 to 30 years, you need to invest in equities. You need to take a certain amount of risk. You can't just put the money in the bank and hope for the best. Because if you do that, you miss out on opportunity and you miss out on better returns. So you've got to capitalize on the opportunity for better returns long term. Next slide. Obviously, the other reasons you're putting it into a trust is to protect it from other uses. Governmental entities have lots of demands on their resources. You folks know that as well as anybody else. And so when a dollar comes in, you've got a plethora of opportunities. I could put it toward programs. I could put it toward staff. I could put it toward other operations. you've got a lot of needs. So why put it into a trust? Well, one of the reasons is, first of all, it's a liability that you have to pay down. And two, you're giving it a chance to grow. And finally, you're protecting it from operation costs and making sure that it's there for the future, which is really what you want to do. A side benefit, of course, is it improves your credit rating. The more you pay off the liability, the better off you are. Next slide. So what do you do in terms of investment options? What are your choices? Next slide. So we tried to make sure that we had a valued partner in US Bank, somebody that could serve as a trustee, somebody that has the experience, somebody that knows what they've been doing, somebody that's been around for a while. And then we have the 5-person investment committee that I mentioned, and that committee meets quarterly to review with our investment manager, Dennis Mullins, to review the status of the portfolio. One of the questions I know that was sent along earlier was, how often should a portfolio be reviewed for appropriate asset allocation? Well, we do it at least quarterly. However, if there's a need, we could meet more regularly. And PARS has annual meetings with each of our members, but makes themselves available at any point in time if there are any questions or any needs that anybody might have. So we do it as often as is necessary, but at least 4 times a year. Next slide. One of the things we heard from folks looking at us as an option, and just remember, we don't advertise ourselves. We don't have brick and mortar. We are here just as a public service to provide a resource for governmental entities. But one of the things we heard is that we want options. Anybody looking at us, we might want a slightly less aggressive option. That would be the income, or maybe slightly more aggressive than income, a balanced, or where we feel is a good comfort spot for something like a long-term investment of OPEB assets under the growth portfolio, and that's our original portfolio. And then we have a more aggressive growth for people that realize it's a long time horizon and there might be even more opportunity for growth. I will tell you, all of our members right now are in the growth portfolio, and that has had a pretty significant success story, which you'll see in a little bit. All of these have been custom designed. All of them effectuate economies of scale because the assets are put together. Each asset is still the asset of each individual entity, but you get the economies of scale of lower fees and lower administrative costs. We also choose low expense funds, no reason to overpay in the marketplace, which helps drive down our costs. Next slide. So this is really our secret sauce, if you will. I'm always reminded of the McDonald's ad for the Big Mac. Some people in my age bracket can probably remember the tune better than I, but it always had the special sauce. So what made the Big Mac special in their mind? It was their special sauce. What makes PCOT special? It's PARS, and of course US Bank, but we're talking PARS here. These are the things they offer, 1 through 10. You can read them on your own. You'll see with other options, you don't get the full slate of services. And that's really what we brought to the table. Again, it's the challenge I had at the advisory board meeting to create something that provided a little bit more in terms of resources. And that's what PCOT does. I have to say, because Plymouth County is not just a client, but we're a member, I have been extremely impressed. And I don't know if you can see Kate blush on Zoom, but how incredibly responsive and skilled and professional PARS is. Kate serves as our administrator. She is our team member. I will give you an example. I had to do a GASB 7475 for the county, and I had to get information from them in short order. And I said to Kate, I need an updated GASB profile for us to send to our actuary. Can you get it to me in a week? She said, we can get it to you within an hour. And all that information was assembled, available, and sent to my actuary within 45 minutes. I have never dealt with such a group of responsive individuals dedicated to providing this level of service. And I hear it from our members regularly. Tom, we love PCOT, we love the investment performance, but we really love PARS and Kate. Next slide. So one of the things that frustrated me as I was putting together the Plymouth County OPEB Trust Program was I couldn't find what anybody's fees were. I couldn't even go to the state and find out what their fees were. They wouldn't tell you. You had to ask and ask, and even when you asked, they said, well, it would depend on the portfolio. If you have X number of dollars invested in this product, it's Y. If you have different choices, it's Z. I'm like, just tell me what they are. Publish a document and tell me what your fees are. I even asked the investment professionals, tell me what your fees are. Give me a picture. I want to know. And they're not available. And I said to Pars and US Bank, I said, listen, two things. One, our fees always have to be the lowest in the industry. Two, they always have to be transparent and available so that anybody wants to know what our fees are at the drop of a hat, they can. So if you visit our link in our website and you see any information, you'll always know what PCOT's fees are. And you can see that our fees go down as we increase our assets. Gee, what a novel idea. Pass the savings on to our members. And it's proved to work exceedingly well. Right now, our all-in fees are 39 basis points or BIPs, which is 1/10 of 1%. A BIP is 1/10 of 1%. So 39 BIPs is pretty low. The industry average is between 50 and 75. So we've managed to reduce that significantly. And it's only going to go down as we grow our assets. And that's for both. Most people are paying their fee just for the financial services. They're not getting the administrative support. So you're really overpaying, in my humble opinion, for one service, not for both. Next slide. Love this. Again, it just shows how our fee continues to go down. And as I mentioned, because we crossed the $30 million threshold, our blended fee all in is 39 basis points. And what does that mean in terms of dollars? Next slide. You can see that with 800,000, and I'm sorry because my screen is being covered by it would be about $260 a month, and that is one of the lowest in the industry, really, not just in this region. And so we've achieved our goal of providing exemplary service at the lowest fees we could possibly create. Next slide. So what is the agency role? Remember, you as the board of the Old Colony Planning Council are the agency. We've tried to make this as easy as possible for you. All you'd have to do as a member of PCOT is contribute funds into the trust, obviously participate to whatever level you wanted to, either on the investment committee or in our regular meetings. You could submit the disbursements request. And there were a couple of questions about that I was asked to just touch upon briefly, and I will. And I'm hoping this isn't too obtuse, but I love this stuff. I could literally talk about this all night, and I promise I'll definitely be done by midnight. I promise everybody here, I won't go a minute past midnight. But so one of the things as you're putting all this money together, there were two questions that I thought came across the transom for you guys. One, what happens if there's an early retirement package? And by the way, I know there's a lot of talk about that up on Beacon Hill. My humble opinion as a former legislator is I don't know that this is going to be the time for that. But if it is, and people retire, what happens to your funds? Well, quite candidly, nothing, because you folks then need to make a decision if you want to continue pay as you go, which is what you are. You're currently paying your retiree costs, or if you wanted to use some of the funds in your OPEB trust to defray some of that cost. But that's a decision that's going to be made by the entire group and all of the stakeholders. You should include your actuary, you include your trustees, you include your treasurer, and you make a decision. What's interesting, however, is most programs here in Massachusetts have never dispersed any funds. Everybody's in the build-up stage. And so when they go to disperse funds, they're going to be scratching their head and say, well, how do we do that? Well, the advantage of having PARS is they've already done that. They've done that on the western part of the country, and they know how to disperse funds. And quite candidly, you would just work with them and say, I want X number of dollars to be covering our retiree costs. That is then something you don't have to take out of your operating budget and will help defray that cost. However, if you're reducing your assets in your OPEB trust, your discount rate will go down and your liability will go up. That's why you want to involve your actuary. That's why you want to involve your treasurer and make a conscientious decision about that. On the disbursement request, the real exciting thing is that when you get to that point, PARS knows how to do it. I had a conversation with them about Plymouth County and said, if we had a tough budget year and I wanted to defray for a year my retiree healthcare costs and take it out of our OPEB trust, and Plymouth County has built their OPEB trust up pretty significantly over the last couple of years as well. Can I do that? And Kate's answer is absolutely you can, Treasurer. Let us know. I would suggest most people aren't ready to do that. You guys are in a great position because you worked so hard to build up your trust. You may need to, in a tough year, disperse funds. I'd suggest you need PARS because they know how to do it. And then the other thing you'd be responsible for is monitoring the reports on the account and investment activity. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty well done. Another question that came across the pike was about whether these assets are insured by the FDIC. And you'll see on presentations that you folks have seen that all of them say not insured by the FDIC. And that's referred to as the no, not, may disclaimer. Because they are invested equities, there will be no bank guarantee. That's what the FDIC does, is insure bank assets. So there'll be no bank guarantee. It's not insured by the FDIC, and they may lose value because they're investments. So no, not, may, no bank guarantee, not insured by the FDIC, may lose value. But that's true of all investments. It's just a federal disclaimer that they require you to put on, and it really is so that folks that are investing these assets understand there is a chance, as we saw last February, that the assets can go down in value. However, we do believe long-term that they'll meet certain goals and objectives. Also, there was a question about bonding, and so our agencies, PARS and U.S. Bank, has all of the appropriate insurances they need, including fiduciary liability insurance and professional liability insurance. They're not new to this game, which is why I was excited to partner with them, because instantly we have credibility, we have expertise, both on the administrative side and the investment side as well. Next slide. So, in short, rather than have listened to me for the last 30 minutes, you could have read this page. This is what we do. This is why we think we are unique. This is why people, when they hear about us, can't wait to learn more, can't wait to flock to us. Again, we don't advertise. It's word of mouth. We're thrilled. We had a chance to chat yesterday that there were some early adopters, including the town of Plimpton, including the town of Whitman. They got on board early. They have reaped the benefits of being a member of the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. And we're certainly hoping more people hear about it. Not surprisingly, as people begin to think of these things, our phone has picked up a little bit more as people are hearing about us. And we're certainly thrilled that our phone rang from the Old Colony Planning Council to ask us about what we're doing. Next slide. The other nice thing about us is we're local, we're close. I'm only a stone's throw from where Lee Hartman is right now. And so you can pick up the phone and call me and send me an email. Kate is available. It seems to be 24/7. Kate, I won't commit you to that, but certainly during all business hours. And we're here for you when you need us. Again, the value add is the administrative side of things. You can get investment advice from lots of people, but good quality administrative support is hard to find. Next slide. So we have a quick appendix here because we always get asked, well, who are members of Plymouth County OPEB Trust? And here are our current list of 29 members. I can tell you there are 2 or 3 members that are looking to join us in the very near term, but these are the ones that are with us that we can announce. I talked a little bit yesterday about 2. I'll only highlight one. One is that I'll highlight is the town of Weymouth. Now, why am I highlighting Weymouth? Well, Weymouth has a pretty big financial team. They have a team of 5 or 6 professionals, and when they decided to look to where to put their OPEB trust money, and they have some significant assets, they looked at every option from the state to investment opportunities with banks and investment professionals and us. And after a 6-month review, very thorough, I might add, I've had medical exams that are less intrusive, they decided to join the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. And we're thrilled. And there are some news articles which you may want to read. What I like to say at the end of this list is don't believe what I've been telling you. Call these people. Talk to any of your colleagues, whether they're boards of selectmen or planning board members or administrators or treasurers, and see if they are pleased with the service they're getting in Plymouth County OPEB Trust. Another point I should make is that when I set this up and worked with Kate and Dennis and US Bank and Partners, I said, listen, we cannot charge a penalty at all if anybody wants to leave. If anybody is not happy with the services we're providing, they should be able to go no. So that is one of the unique points of our trust. If you decide you found a better opportunity, 30 days written notice, you can leave, no surcharge, assets intact. We were the first to do it around here. Others are now thinking about that. And not surprisingly, others are trying to drive down their fees to compete with what we offer. But we were first, and I still think we're the best at it. And we make sure that we don't penalize anybody if we're not doing what we should do. Why did we set it up that way? Because it makes us better. It makes us responsive. It makes us want to make sure our customers are happy every minute of every day. So the next slide I wanted to show, I know that we had a chance just to, and Mary's going to upload it for us, send it off to you folks, because we had a chance to look at data as of the end of February. And we just thought we'd give you a quick snapshot of what you currently have and what you would have with Plymouth County OPEB Trust. And again, this is a snapshot. Ironically, there we go. Sorry about that. So this just shows from an investment point of view, how, I'll let Mary do her magic here.
Thank you.
Yeah, how you would be doing with us and how at least we've done in comparison. So you can see from every rubric, and our returns, and I'm pretty sure the ones that are here for you are net of fees. So after all fees, you can see over a 3-month period, the returns. You can see over a 1-year period, the returns. Now, let's talk about the 3-year period. That's pretty close, but remember, that's annualized. So for 3 years, we've returned on average each of the years 9.81% versus a number that's lower. The real number that I want to highlight is the 5-year performance. This isn't a fluke. We're not performing better by luck. We're performing better because we have a great team, fantastic investment professionals that know what they're doing, and we have low-cost investment options with lower fees. You know, people say to me, but Tom, you're only 20 or 30 basis points lower. That doesn't really matter that much. You know what? It adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So it does matter. I like to say, if you watch every penny, the dollars take care of themselves. And that's what we do here at the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. We watch every penny. So 2 other important things that people want to know. They want to know what our stock exposure is. And you can see, yes, we have a fairly aggressive portfolio, 73% right now, under the growth one, versus where you guys are. But we just feel long-term, and history suggests, and in fact, I'd like to talk for a moment about the period from February of 2020 to February of 2021. I mean, during the pandemic in February, where the market lost 40% in a few weeks, I'm sure people were saying, oh my goodness, you shouldn't be exposed 70% to stocks. That's crazy. Thank goodness we're only exposed 40 or 30% to stocks. Well, ironically, that proved not to be a good idea even a few months later, as the market bottomed on March 23rd, 2020, and rebounded to sites never seen before. In fact, if you were in a more conservative portfolio for that 1-year period, you missed out on the greatest growth in the history of the United States of America. So there's as much risk in not being invested in a growth portfolio as there is being invested in one, in my humble opinion. And I think we've seen that during the pandemic. And then, of course, the fees, we touch base on it. There's our blended rate. There's what you're currently paying. Not too much of a difference, but I do believe it makes a difference over time. So that's it. I tried to weave into that narrative some of the questions that I knew you folks had. There may be more, and I really wanted to afford a chance before I do. If it's okay with you, Madam President, I'm just going to see if Kate Canny wanted to add anything, if I've missed anything in that presentation. I was 4 minutes under my time, maybe 11 minutes longer than you wanted. But Kate, was there anything else I should have added?
Oh, you covered it all.
So at this point, I don't know if there are any questions, but we're here to answer them.
Madam President, just as for the delegates and alternates, we are, after questions, I believe that Doug Silvestri is going to make a motion to have this, the presentation go back to finance, so the vetting and the comparisons can be further discussed.
I have 2 questions, Madam Chair. Okay, so my first question, thank you, Tom, for, as usual, giving us a wonderful presentation.
I was watching that and you didn't fall asleep, so thank you.
Well, I don't know, I had my picture off most of the time, so you don't know that for sure.
Oh, so you were cheating a little bit there.
Yeah. I always, yeah, anyway, that's another story. The 2 questions I have is, one, if Mary or someone can give us some insight into whether or not Rockland Trust right now is giving us the other services. I know at one of our meetings, we talked about the fact that our trust was not fully set up, so I'm assuming we're not getting that level of service right now. And then my other question was for Tom, and just when we talk about stock exposure, and that's something we did talk a little bit about with our current advisors, to what extent is that portfolio pretty diversified among companies and equities, to sort of lessen the chance that you get hit by a particular stock or a particular sector that gets hit, like in the middle of a pandemic, for example.
So, Mary, did you want to answer the first question? I can't answer that.
I'm actually thinking either Brenda or Charlie might be able to. Just repeat it one more time for me, Becky.
Oh, you muted, Becky.
Oh, I muted, unmuted and remuted. So my question was, when we look at the level of services that Tom was outlining that PCOT is able to get through PARS, including some services with regard to trust establishment or trust compliance. I know that when we met, there was some discussion of the fact that we still had some work to do on finishing our own trust. So I'm wondering if that tells me that those are services that our current investment manager cannot provide to us.
As I recall, the discussion from Rockland Trust was, well, our irrevocable trust was set up in 2012. In more recent GASB guidance, there's a additional trust documentation that has to be done, and that's fairly new, and that's something that Rockland Trust brought up within the last 6 months. So
then I guess my question for Tom is that the kind of advice that PCOT is able to give us in terms of giving us trust documents that would be compliant?
So the short answer, yeah, the short answer is absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I'm thrilled we have PARS. They've prepared and vetted all of our trust documents. Listen, there are a lot of great professionals out there doing this, including Rockland Trust and many others. They're very good at what they do. So please understand that. I think the value add that PARS brings to the table is this is what they do exclusively, right? They're administering OPEB trusts. It's what they know. It's their expertise. So when they draft up trust documents for us, they're done and dusted, and I don't have to worry about that. As a treasurer, I really like that because I avoid some of those questions that come up because I know it's already been done. So yeah, we got a heads up on these changes that were coming, and they came fairly recently. Charlie's absolutely correct, but we actually knew about them a year ago because PARS was able to notify us because they were following what was happening. I want Kate to elaborate a little bit because she is the representative from PARS and can probably answer that more directly. Kate?
So PARS actually has a history of managing OPEB trusts that dates back to 1998. We worked with a school district in California to help them address this liability. And then in 2004, we developed our multiple employer trust approach, which is a master trust document that, which is what Plymouth County operates under. That document and our trust received the first private letter ruling from the IRS, which guarantees all assets coming in and out of the trust are tax exempt. Very important for you as an agency who's funding, that you don't face any tax burdens. Also important for your beneficiaries. So we have that. And then the key thing is making sure your trust is always GASB compliant. It's kind of funny, the statute under which Massachusetts agencies operate their trust is MGL Chapter 32B, Section 20. And it didn't specifically say the trusts have to be GASB compliant, which for anybody who doesn't know, it's quite simple. The assets have to be dedicated to retiree health care. They have to be protected from creditors, and they have to be irrevocable, which, by the way, irrevocable for anything but retiree health care costs. Our trust is always operated under the GASB 45 guidelines. So our trust is already that way. We maintain those standards. We have both attorneys on the state levels of all 12 states we operate under, and also on the federal level, we have federal attorneys that are monitoring state and federal and IRS regulations so that our trusts are always up to date. In 2016, when the state legislation was passed to update MGL Chapter 32B, Section 20, we met with Kopelman and Page and Murphy Hesse, kind of played them off each other to make sure there was nothing we were missing. Our documents were up to those standards, so we didn't have to change our program. But what we did is we met with all of our clients to make sure they understood that there were no changes that they needed to make. We were also able to guide new clients on whether or not they had adopted, which statute they had adopted, because there's differences in how you approach different boxes you have to check. So that's what we do for our clients and make sure that everybody's operating efficiently and appropriately under the standards. So that's my job, is to let you know that you need to update something.
So in short, Becky, one of the great things of having PARS involved, and Kate mentioned the change to Section 20, and as you know, I used to serve in the legislature, so I know these changes happen. We were already compliant before they made the change, and because PARS knew this was coming down the pike. And when I say we, that's every member of our group. Didn't need to change anything. We're already ahead of the curve. And so they are thinking of these things ahead just because that's their job. And that's why we have them. There was a question that came in on the chat about PARS. How long are they under contract? They have been retained for the life of the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. So they are with us. They understand the value of the partnership, as do we. And I think they pride themselves on serving governmental entities. And so that's what they do. And that's where they want to be. I was thrilled when Kate was recently promoted. I don't want her to blush again. But because of the great work that she does, she received an internal promotion, which was well-deserved. So we have PARS as long as Plymouth County OPEB Trust is there, unless, of course, something were to go awry, we could sever that relationship, but I can't imagine that happening at all down the road because they're so good at what they do. Your second question, Becky, was about asset allocation. I will tell you, I think we actually do it more frequently than most because we're forced by US Bank to hone in quarterly on that. I'll tell a little story. We are very diversified is the short answer to your question. we have every necessary asset class. One of the asset classes we were in was commodities. It's a good hedge against a fault in the stock market. But Dennis came to us about 7 months before the decline in the pandemic and just said, we see indicators from our 1,000 investment professionals that are indicating commodities are not a good hedge any longer, and we should be out of commodities. We had a very small portion of our portfolio in commodities. So the investment committee sat, and we ruminated, and we listened to what they had to say, showed us documentation. We said, you're right, get out of commodities, no reason to be in them. And then, not surprisingly to us at least, commodities took a bath in February and March. So not only are we diversified, but we check that diversity on a regular basis. If for whatever reason, a 73% allocation equities is a little bit more aggressive than the group would want to be collectively, then one of the things that you can do is choose one of our other options.
Thanks, Tom.
And Madam President, I don't know if any other delegates or alternates have any questions.
Dan, as a member of the Plymouth County Advisory Board and a fellow PCOT member, did you have anything you wanted to add? All right, well, I'll tell my story. So in 2015, my town was, we had some money that that we came into, and we wanted to get it into an OPEB fund. And we looked closely at the state's fund and also at Plymouth County. They came in, they did presentations. We really ruminated on this and discussed it because it was a lot of money for us, and we wanted to make the right decision. So we chose Plymouth County. We had a long-standing relationship with Tom. We felt very comfortable with them and the ideas that they had on investment, and we have done very well with Plymouth County. I'm extremely grateful to be involved with them and the support they give the town. We're a very small town and the support has been wonderful for our treasurer and others, town administrator, who are trying to plan for this liability. So I'm extremely grateful to Tom and the team for all the help that they've given us.